Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Simon, and it's wonderful being back with you as we continue in this series, Embracing the Unfamiliar. Today we're talking about growth potential in embracing the unfamiliar, that factor of fear of the unknown. How do you deal with it? How do you face it? Well, we're in facing it, we've talked about these different characteristics of how to do it. But what good is in all that? What do we get out of that? Well, there's a growth potential in facing those kinds of things, which is the thing you don't want to think about when you have a fear of the unknown and you're anxious and feeling threatened and so on. But it is helpful to think that way. And if you keep thinking that way, then it gets a little easier and easier in answering the whys and wheres and who and how and when and all those questions that just overflow your mind when you're dealing with unfamiliar things and there seems to be a bit of anxiousness about it all. Embracing the unknown is often daunting, yet it holds significant potential for personal growth. Stepping out of one's comfort zone can be substantial development. It's a growth aspect of your life if you allow it to be. It can be helpful. Bad things can be good if you look for the good in the bad. And of course, it doesn't mean that it's all good. There could be terrible things, but what can we learn? How can we grow through this present experience? And that's what we're looking at and trying to grow through dealing with those threats of the unknown. So various aspects of life, including mental resilience, it strengthens your mind. It makes you stronger, braver, we could say, in facing those things. So it's a good thing. It increases your emotional intelligence. People have emotional intelligence at the levels in which oftentimes where difficulties may lie in their past, they get stuck in emotional intelligence. Now, they could be 50 years old, but a 15-year-old emotionally, they get along with other 50-year-olds who are 15 years old emotionally, but they don't get along with the more mature 50-year-olds who are emotionally more mature. And yet, this isn't something that has to remain there. It can grow. You can catch up that emotional intelligence by working on certain things. And today we're talking about some of those things to work on that's going to grow that emotional intelligence when dealing with the unfamiliar. And also, there's this overall self-awareness that comes about when you step into the comfort zone, when you step into that stretching your discomfort and getting familiar with the unfamiliar, you become more self-aware about yourself. You're more aware of your identity and the things you like about yourself, as well as the things you don't like. But when I can be aware of the things I don't like, I work on those things. It makes me find more things that I like because I'm improving those things I might not like. You're no different than me. I'm no different than you. There are practical steps to embracing the unknown, and so we're going to talk about just 4 of them here. There's many more, but here are some big ones that are important. Develop a growth mindset is the first one. Cultivate an attitude that views challenges as opportunities to learn and grow rather than threats to avoid. Again, I mentioned before, I like to use the traffic because up here in the Atlanta area there's so much traffic, so I'm always thinking about where to go, where to drive, where not to drive, when not to drive, and so on. But taking that little extra detour in a direction I haven't gone before, it's stimulating. It's a learning experience, but it's also making me more self-aware of how I am in this unknown area. And it's an opportunity. So take those opportunities. If you've never been to the museum, make a point of going to the museum. If you've never been to a golf course, well, ride around a golf course or watch it on TV even. If you've never done something, think about doing it, at least a little bit, at least getting familiar with it, because those are stimulating things that help you to grow. And that grows the emotional intelligence. Enhance that emotional intelligence in doing those things and other things. Work on becoming more aware of your emotional reactions and how they affect your thoughts and behaviors. This awareness can make it easier to navigate those new experiences. So when I'm going down a side street that I haven't been down before, I'm more aware, I'm more alert, because there's strange things. I don't know what's going to happen on that corner, or who might pull out that you wouldn't expect. But gosh, look at the houses, look at the flowers, the trees, or the garbage cans. Look at these things. You're growing, you're expanding your horizons. When that happens, you're growing the emotional intelligence as you take those little risks. Now, you don't have to take big risks. I don't want you to take big risks. Those little risks are where you go over and over again. Another little risk here, a little risk there. You're growing that emotional intelligence. The third is build resilience. Gradually expose yourself to challenging situations, which can help you build that capacity to cope with stress, recover from those setbacks. If I can build my strength to cope with stress, I'm developing, I'm becoming more confident and less fearful. Connect socially and relationally with friends and relatives or coworkers. Don't expect to connect with you. You connect with them. And your Christian brethren, if you go to church, connect a little, make a little more effort to talk to others. You don't have to go out to lunch with them, but make a little effort to introduce yourself to someone you haven't been introduced to. Make a little effort to participate. Raise your hand in a Bible study class or a Sunday school class and ask a question. It doesn't have to be an intellectual question. Just, what if this, or what about this, or what do you think about that? That's engaging. And when you're engaging, you're building resilience. The fourth is seek spiritual serenity. And I can't say enough about the confidence God gives us when we seek Him, when we're trusting in Him. When we build that level of trust, we're actually increasing the emotional intelligence. We're raising it up. Our confidence grows, our self-awareness grows. We become more aware, and we start to realize, I can do this. So for those who follow spiritual and religious practices, seeking guidance and comfort can provide strength and clarity when facing the unknown, dealing with that fear of the unknown. Adopting a mindset that welcomes the unknown can profoundly impact our lives, bringing significant advantages in many areas. It's not just one. If I go down a street I haven't gone down before, it's improving in that area, but it's also helping me become more confident, a little more courageous in doing other things, because I can look back and say, yeah, look what I did there, or look, I got through that traffic jam and I did it fine and all that. And boy, if I did that, I can do it again. So I'm not going to be so afraid of the next traffic jam. These things we have to make ourselves do in order to build our resilience. This approach requires us to leave our comfort zone, though. And that's not easy, especially if you've been housebound or maybe stuck in your routine for so long that you just can't get out of it. It's not comfortable to expand that comfort zone. You have to make yourself do it at first. And it's approaching those uncertainties and openness that brings the curiosity. Okay, I'm going to try this. I'm curious what's going to happen if I try this or if I do that. And then my fear decreases. My apprehension decreases. My worry decreases. Confronting the unfamiliar situations forces individuals to adapt and learn new strategies, fostering flexibility and enhancing cognitive abilities. So like I said, you find yourself in a traffic jam and, oh, okay, you get through it. I mean, eventually you're going to get through it. It's very rare if you spend the night in the car. I remember when we first moved up here, there was a snowstorm, and on the interstate, people had to spend the night in their cars. Well, it's very rare. I mean, maybe once in a lifetime you hear about it even, but certainly it's nothing that most of us are ever going to experience. But if you did, the next day you realize, look what I did. I remember when I was young and I would go first time camping when I was in the Cub Scouts, and I went camping, and there's an excitement, but there's also a fear and apprehension because I've never done this before. What's going to happen? And am I going to survive the night? How am I going to sleep in a tent? I'm thinking all that when I'm a little kid. And then you do it, and the next day, and you go, wow, look, I did that. Let's do it again. I hope we don't have to go home tomorrow. You start to realize when you can do something that you were afraid of doing, wow, you build power, you build control, you build your identity, you strengthen that identity, and you're increasing your emotional intelligence as you do those things. So confronting the unfamiliar situations forces us to grow, forces us to adapt. It emphasizes that confronting uncertainty activates more alert, attentive state of mind, improving decision-making processes, and leading to more innovative thinking. If you have difficulty in making decisions, well, look at that. Perhaps you've been stuck in a rut for too long. You need to get out of that comfort zone, make some stretching exercises mentally by making some decisions that you wouldn't normally have made, or you might have passed the buck to somebody else. Do these things you haven't done before, and before you know it, you're starting to have an easier time making decisions. Moreover, it illustrates that adopting a growth mindset, wanting to grow, wanting to expand my horizon, expand my familiarity, wanting to try new things, step out in new directions, which thrives and challenges me. It helps me to see where I've been lacking, but it also helps me to see I can do it and where I can go with it. I have a direction when that occurs, and with that direction there's hope, and with hope, encouragement, joy, and whatever else that may come from that. So it significantly improves your capacity to learn and adapt when you stretch yourself out of the comfort zone and into those unfamiliar situations. Emotional intelligence is an important factor, and I've talked about it briefly, but it's a factor that enhances one's ability to thrive. And if I'm thriving, I'm going to thrive in a new environment more easily. So in an area I haven't been in, let's say you've never gone to the mall in your area, and you've never been in there. Well, the fear will grow if you think about it more and more in a threatening way, that is the fearful way, all the reasons why not to go. But if you make yourself go and walk around in it, suddenly you're thriving, you're enhancing, you're developing that resilience that's so important. So emotional intelligence includes your self-awareness, where you're at, how you're feeling, what you're doing. Are you breathing? If you have anxiety, people don't realize their anxiety causes their breathing to go down. They're not taking those deep, steady breaths. They become shallower and they don't realize it because their mind is overworking in these other areas of thought, and it's actually causing the body to not respond as it normally would. think more about this, think less about breathing. And so the breathing gets shallower. And before you know it, the heart starts to pound, demanding more oxygen, and anxiety wells up, or an anxiety attack may occur. So what's the most important thing? Well, become more self-aware. Am I breathing right now? I'm going through a stressful moment. So think less about the stressful moment. Think more about breathing, taking those deep, steady breaths. I'm becoming more self-aware. I'm self-regulating as part of my emotional intelligence. It's helping me to self-regulate. I'm being motivated as part of my emotional intelligence. I'm developing empathy as part of my emotional intelligence, which is understanding of others, putting myself in others' shoes, thinking more about them than me, thinking less about your fears, more about the needs of others. Your social skills are growing as a result of emotional intelligence, essential for recognizing one's emotional responses to change and effectively managing them occurs as you're lifting that emotional intelligence. Resilience plays a crucial role in effectively managing the stress and anxiety that often accompany unknown situations. Resilience is not a rare quality exclusive to few individuals, but a common phenomena that people can develop through exposure to adversity. You're building a resilience muscle. The exposure helps you build a resilience muscle that prepares individuals for future challenges, promoting a sense of mastery and control over those unknown circumstances or any circumstance. By embracing the unknown or the fear of the unknown in relationships, we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Not easy to be vulnerable, especially if you've been victimized in the past. How do you allow yourself to be vulnerable in the future? And so there's a guardedness that occurs when there's been victimization. And sometimes you think you're beyond that, until suddenly you realize you're having difficulty in relationships, you're having difficulty communicating, you're going a little deeper in talking about this problem or that situation or how you're feeling at the moment. And that difficulty is preventing you from bonding, from getting close to that other person. And you don't even realize it's the guardedness due to the victimization, the child inside that is locked in that negative stronghold in the memory, and you can't even remember it perhaps, but it's still there, it's still active, and it's sending out stress signals, it's sending out those threatening signals, intense negative emotions to be careful right now. And so you constrict your thoughts, your emotions, and maybe even you distract to other things to talk about instead of talking about what you need to talk about at this moment with that close personal individual. This vulnerability can foster deeper connections when you identify it, you build resilience to it, it fosters deeper connections as it encourages honesty and authenticity. So if there is a trauma in the past, if there is victimization in the past, see a counselor, talk about it, deal with it, face it. As an adult, you may think, well, I understand that, it doesn't bother me anymore. But does the child inside feel the same way in that memory? Is that healed in that memory? Or when you look at that memory again, are you still feeling those intense negative emotions? And if you are, go see a counselor, especially a Christian counselor, a clinical Christian counselor who's capable of working with you through that and getting healing for that child in that memory, tearing down the stronghold of the past, the negative stronghold of the past, which brings healing into the present, brings more of who you are that's been locked away. It releases that and allows you to be more vulnerable. And we want to be vulnerable in healthy ways. So certainly there's a healthy way of being vulnerable. We still need to be cautious and trust people that we're vulnerable, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable with. They earned the trust, however. And so you trust them at that level that they've earned in the area of vulnerability. Venturing into new social circles or engaging in unfamiliar social activities can expand our social networks, introducing us to diverse perspectives and potentially lifelong connections. From a spiritual perspective, embracing the unknown can be seen as a journey of faith and trust in God through Jesus Christ. This journey involves relationship, it involves bonding, it involves connecting, but it also involves relinquishing control, letting go of that control and allowing faith to guide one through uncertainty. How can I truly have trust if I'm guarded, if I'm self-protective, if I'm fearful, if I'm easily threatened? And if I can't truly have trust, how do I grow? How do I bond? And in relationship with God, I have to trust Him. To trust Him, I have to learn more about Him. I've got to read the Bible. I've got to go to church. I've got to go to Bible studies or listen on the radio or TV or on the phone, lessons on different topics. I've got to read those blogs that Dr. Saman has written or anybody else has written about different things. And I've got to get to know God. I've got to increase my awareness of who He is, because as I do, I'm increasing my level of trust. As I increase my level of trust, emotional intelligence actually grows. It actually helps expand emotional intelligence. The more you are able to trust anyone, your emotional intelligence automatically begins to grow closer to your chronological age. So trust is so important, but in that relationship with God, I've got to grow the trust then. And to do that, I have to do all those things that I mentioned. And when I do, as the trust has grown to a point that I can say I'm confident that He's got my back, my emotional intelligence is being raised up to that level as well. This journey involves relinquishing control and allowing faith to guide one through uncertainty. This approach can lead to profound spiritual growth, enhanced mental peace, and individuals learn to depend not solely on their understanding, but spiritual insights as well. An insight is knowledge combined with the understanding of that knowledge. Then insight comes into the picture at that point. And with insight, there's wisdom. But you need knowledge. So you need to learn about that person or learn about God. You need understanding. Okay, I understand why that person does this or that or doesn't do this or that. I understand why God has done what He's done or not done what He's done, that He loves us unconditionally, and so on and so forth. Now I have insights. I feel closer to that person. I feel closer to God. I can predict what's going to happen next with that person or with God in my relationship. And with that comes wisdom. Recognizing the valuable endeavor for personal development that comes from facing your fears is essential. It enhances cognitive flexibility. Your flexibility in thinking, you become less rigid in your thinking. You're able to adapt to situations by giving a little here or taking a little there, giving a little there, and so on, back and forth. You're able to be flexible and compromise. because good relationships involves compromise. There are times you really want something, but the other person wants something else even more. Are you willing to compromise to find a middle ground there and you're both happy? That's a big part of relationship. So it enhances cognitive flexibility, emotional intelligence, resilience, and spiritual well-being. Each step into the unfamiliar is a step towards discovering new aspects of oneself and unlocking the potential that might otherwise remain trapped. If you go searching for treasure, you're not going to find it unless you're searching for it. And if you're searching for it, you may have that wonderful moment of discovering it, of finding it. And when you do, you open that box and you see what's in there, and that's wonderful and that's great. But if you're not looking for it, you're never going to find it. If you're not searching it out, if you're not getting out of your comfort zone and making those efforts, you don't have a box to open. You're not going to find that treasure. In spirituality and faith, the significance of wisdom and understanding transcends mere intellectual attainment. In other words, you can be very smart. I've got a lot of clients, they're geniuses, but they got emotional intelligence way down here, or they have fears way up there, but they're geniuses. They really can do their job really great at the workplace, or they can be really creative in whatever genius area they may be, but they can't get along with anybody, or they have difficulties with this issue or that issue. It's because they've got to enhance that. It's not the intellectual abilities that make them able to face the unknown and get past that fear of the unknown. It's those efforts that they make. It's stretching that comfort zone. They're not going to think through it. They have to do it. Embodying a profound depth of insight and discernment that anchors the soul as they begin that understanding process. Individuals graced with such wisdom and understanding stand unshaken in adversity. Adversity comes when you have that confidence that God has your back. You handle the adversity a whole lot better. You're still going to have adversity like everybody else, but you're going through it more smoothly. You're getting out of it faster, and you're learning from it. You've grown as a result of it. Whereas others who don't have that confidence in God, don't have that spiritual understanding, they hit the adversity and it's overwhelming. It's too much. It's too heavy. It weighs them down. All they're thinking is the negative, the doom and gloom, and so on. It takes longer to get out of it, if they ever get out of it. And when they do, they're not any better from the experience. They're worse. This resilience stems from a heart firmly rooted in trust in the Lord, a trust that imbues them with unwavering steadiness and peace. The inception of true wisdom is deeply entwined in the reverence for the Lord. This sacred awe and respect paves the way for following wisdom within the human spirit. Complementing this, the attainment of understanding is intricately linked to an intimate acquaintance with the Holy One, with God. To know God, who is the divine, is to access a level of comprehension or understanding that transcends or changes the mere facts, the mere knowledge, reaching into spiritual insight and divine truth. In this light, in what we've just said, these principles serve as ideals and practical pillars for living a life marked with spiritual depth, resilience, and a profound sense of peace and purpose. Don't we all want that peace and purpose? Since my wife has passed on to heaven 2.5 years ago, I constantly asking God for peace and purpose. Give me purpose. She was my purpose. So now my purpose needs to be enhanced. That emptiness needs to be filled. What are you going to give me today? What's the purpose for today? Give me purpose to get up in the morning and get going and do these things and get through this difficult time and come out better, come out stronger, come out more resilient, more insightful. That's what she would want. And that's what we want, that peace and purpose. You don't have to lose a loved one to experience that. You just have to get out of that stuck zone that you might be in. Stretch your comfort zone. Try those unfamiliar things a little at a time. Make those little extra efforts with bonding with others, or just give them a call. Don't wait for them to call you. You call them. They remind us that a relationship with God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is the heart of wisdom and understanding. This relationship transforms or changes our approach to life's challenges and enriches our journey through the world. Well, next time we're going to conclude this series in talking about Be Not Afraid, paving the way to bravery and spiritual renewal. I hope you'll join us then. May your troubles be minor, blessings more, and happiness come through your door. God bless.